Welcome to Squirrel, the podcast for distracted writers, hosted by Candace J. Thomas and Jody L. Milner. Hey everybody, welcome to Squirrel. This is Jody.
This is Candace.
And today we are talking all about using poetry to unlock the beauty in your prose. There's a really good reason for this.
Okay.
April's Poetry Month.
Yes, it is.
And normally Candy gets to do all the poetry stuff. I'm like, how can I pull poetry into my episodes and not have it feel weird?
Yeah, no, this is
so
really
we're going to
good.
have a kind of a interesting look at using poetic exercises and poetic mentality to help add a little more oomph to your prose, which is cool. I think a lot of creative people like poetry, but they don't necessarily gravitate towards it just because they have this feeling that it's hard or it's very, very fixed or there's a lot of rules that they don't understand. And
or it's silly.
We're here to dispel that.
Yeah.
We're here to open up the worlds of possibility of how you can use poetry to dig into sensory details, help uncover deeper emotional notes, and also help you to develop your characters. So you can do a lot of good stuff.
It's be fun.
I'm excited.
This is exactly what I do, honestly. Yeah. So I'm excited. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, dive in.
Right. So the first thing I think we should talk about is just your warm-up, basically, right? Your creative warm-up. Just a new way to overcome the overwhelming blank page.
Okay, do you get blank page fear? Do you have it where you're just like, oh, it has to be perfect the first time?
Well,
or, I have no idea how to start what I need to be putting down.
A little bit. Kind of.
Just a little bit. Admit it. You can admit it. It's okay.
Yeah. So I always worry about my first page. You know, it's the scariest thing is starting, right? I think that Stephen King said that. Scariest thing is starting. And I do definitely worry about the first threads of where this is going. That's true. I don't look at my first page as actually going to be my first page. It's usually going to be probably in the middle or
it might end up
maybe in chapter 1. I don't know.
In the garbage can.
It's
most
just
of the
one
time
of those.
It ends up in the
trash.
Is helping me figure out how to get to the beginning of the story.
Exactly. So what I do to help kind of get the creativity going is, well, for poetry, free form is always a really good way to just write out what is slipping out of your brain. Free form is a great lubricant for the mind.
That paints a picture. I'm not sure what kind of picture.
Lots of different pictures, actually. Just letting the words drip from your mind into the page is really kind of fun. But there is a game that we've played. Our friend Christine, she is an excellent poet. And one of the things back when she was teaching English to a bunch of high schoolers, she invited me to one of her classes to be a guest author once. And we played poetry poker, where she had gave everybody, a couple of different cards. And then you had to use these words in a poem. And I like that idea, except I changed the idea because one of the things that I really like is when it comes to getting a little bit more creative, looking a little deeper into the words and the meanings, I like to use abstract ideas and principles. So I got out my cards here, and one of them this is just like things in my green here that nobody can see. And then I have yellow, which is more verb. Okay, Jody, pick one of these yellow ones.
Now I'm worried.
No, it shouldn't be.
Well, now taste.
The taste of what? Let's see.
Did you put the other one away so I can't get it again? The
taste
of your first kiss. You know what? I'm not going to do this live on the air, but I could make that work.
Yeah, could you?
I could probably make that work.
Yeah, I'll get the smell of home. The smell of home.
Oh.
What is that? The smell of home is what?
It's whatever you make it out to be.
Whatever. It would be the smell of Amarode that my mother wore. This beautiful perfume that I have never found again, but I loved it. those things. So that's one of the things that I use, is just coming up with abstract ideas for putting things together like that. What about you?
Very nice. So, and this is like just the creative warm-up phase that we're talking about. So for me, it's just taking a few minutes to let the brain play with words in the same way you would stretch before going on a walk or jog.
Okay.
Like, it's just letting those little synapses open up and start just stretching themselves. And so I would like to suggest playing a game of synonym rolls.
What?
Synonym rolls. It's just fun to say. So what you're going to do is you're going to pick any random word and you're just going to see how many synonyms you can find for it. And then you find the next word and you see how many you can do. So right now I'm just going to grab what we can see. So
Chords? A piano?
we have to pick ones that are going to have synonyms. That's going to be difficult. Happy. You can do happy, content, effervescent, and you can't keep going. And just like with categories, every time you do it, your brain starts doing it better.
Right. Okay.
Because if anyone's played categories, the first round always just bites.
It's
really hard. And then by the third one, you're like, yeah.
You're really on a roll.
I've got this. And then you have to
when you do like the alliteration one and you have these
bonus points all the way.
Bees that big brown bear blue.
Play categories to wake up your brain. Yes. No one says you can't.
I love that.
The next way you can use poetry is to help unlock a better use of your senses.
Ooh, I love this.
I know. And sensory writing is awesome writing. I love digging into it because some of the best writing, I think, digs into the other senses besides sight. And so I think it's what sets reading apart from like watching TV. Because if you're reading a book, you can get like the texture of the shirt he's wearing or the smell of the dew on the grass. Like, we get all of these things that you just can't get from watching a show, which is why I think reading's amazing. You get all the senses depending on your writer. Some writers don't do it, and it makes me sad because it's a wasted opportunity.
Right.
And so my exercise is find something random in your house, a random object at all. And you're going to take 5 minutes describing it and capturing it using all the senses other than sight. And if you want to, you can throw this into just a very freestyle poem where you're capturing those impressions onto the page. Anything that makes sense to you. So what does it smell like? What is the texture? Does it bring back a memory? Is it heavy? Is it light? And just see what you can come up with and exercise the how to describe something without telling people what it looks like.
That's pretty much what I have too. When I'm first drafting, I often write what I see because that's my brain telling me the story and how to describe it, right? So going back, I remember somebody mentioning that like the first page or every page should have at least, 3 or 4 senses in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that could be a good exercise. What we just did with the little cards is another thing that you could do, like the sound of rain. Sometimes it's just hard to describe things. Like if you describe the smell of baking bread, right? We all know what that smell is. It's good scent, but how do you actually describe?
Well, I mean, you've got yeasty, you have it reminding you of grandma.
Right.
It's that thing where you're like, oh my goodness, dinner's almost ready and mom made rolls.
Yes.
And it might be the ones from like the Rhodes rolls from the store and nobody cares.
Nobody cares. It's bread.
It's delicious.
You just made us something hot and fluffy. Yeah. So I'm totally with you. Just finding the things that might be hard to describe in a different engaging
Taking
way.
different angles. You were saying sound, and it made me think of how I can identify which of my kids or my partner are approaching my office by how they walk down the stairs. They each come down the stairs in a very different way, and they each have a different rhythm to how they hit the steps and how heavy they hit the steps. And how evenly they hit the steps. And it's just like, wouldn't that be a cool little detail to be able to include is the rhythm of the steps of the people you love.
That's really interesting.
So, I don't know. It just struck me as funny because they were hounding me relentlessly today. And I was having lots of people coming down the stairs being like, hey, Mom, like it's spring break.
The That's really funny. Our next point would be how poetry can help untangle emotional knots. I love engaging in writing in prose with emotion. I think that's one of the things when you can really speak to your audience. It's just my favorite. And it's fun to put emotion into something that is concrete.
Often the best part of a story is when the main character experiences a huge emotional moment. And it's something that's been built up to throughout the course of the story. It's something that they've earned. But when you get to that moment and you just tell the reader what they're feeling, you're going to rob the reader of the full experience of that emotion. And so if you're writing something like they were sad, like really sad, like the saddest they've ever been, your reader's going to probably throw your book across the room because it's not enough. It doesn't give them any imagery to sink their teeth into. And so I would challenge you to dive into the world of metaphor here, because you can really seize these abstract contexts. This brings us right back to the poetry, is we want to make comparisons from one thing to the other. And so I would encourage you to take out your favorite notebook and start making a list of comparisons of anything, just anything. Her face was like a flower. His shoe was like a rotten hamster. I don't know. Just see what can come up and then start focusing it into the thing you're trying to capture. Because capturing emotions is difficult, but there is a whole well of things you can draw from that can really capture it in a way that the reader's like, oh, wow, that really touched me in a way I didn't expect. That imagery was something that was uniquely beautiful or just interesting enough, or now I remember, now I can see it. So metaphor is really nice.
Okay, emotions are my favorite. I think it's fun to put emotion into everything that is concrete. And I do this a lot. What emotion can tie to like maybe a specific object that might be something that is in the room. There's some kind of personal connection to it. I like to find some kind of emotional bond with things, with objects. Like I was talking about my mother's perfume. If you can get an emotional connection with this specific object, how would that person remember and feel by smelling that specific smell? Another thing I like to do is not just the like personification, try to give it a background, try to give it like a emotional connection to the character maybe. But I do also like to use alliteration to help bring in that emotional connection. That's a poetry trick that people don't realize that they can remember a phrase or a refrain when there's specific repeating sounds. There is a way to project an emotion through those repeating sounds that stirs people. And I don't know what kind of magic that is, but it definitely, that would be a great way to find your emotional connection there, or what do you say? Untangle those emotional knots.
I thought that was quite lovely. So that brings us into our next point, which is using poetic techniques to help you discover your character's inner world. I hesitate to let you take this one first.
Why?
Because the last one went so well.
Stop it. Yeah, okay. How about this? And this is for character, right? We're trying to connect the character to a world. What I like to do for this is I use journaling for my character development. Do you do this?
Sometimes.
I really like to, if I don't understand the character's motivation, I like to journal. Journaling can be, it sounds just like a good exercise, but I know that the way that I journal is rather personal. Like I'm putting down personal details with what's going on or how I'm feeling. And this is what I try to do for my characters. It's just a good way of experimenting with the poetic voice. What is going on? What are they emotionally feeling? How is it going to affect what is going, like what they're about to face, maybe? So it's just a kind of a fun mindset. The thing that I love about journaling your characters is no one's going to read it.
Nope.
This is all just background, and you won't need to use this in your story. This is just helping you understand your character. So it will come out in their specific characteristics and how they approach specific problems. But that's my favorite way. And I think that's a poetic way to experiment with your voice.
It's a form of free writing.
Yes.
And free writing can be considered a poetic exercise, especially if you're not binding yourself to like having to write complete sentences. When I think about a character's inner world, I think about a character having two halves. So the one is the one they allow the world to see, and the one is their true self, their inner world. And sometimes the two are very well aligned, and these are the people who are very self-actualized. And sometimes they're very different from each other. And so it's really fun to play with the inner narrative versus what they're showing the world and showing how it's different, because that makes a fascinating character. So honestly, I would have your character do the exercises we've talked about. I'd have you do an exercise like free writing, but have it be your character ranting about a problem they've got. Having them do comparisons. How would they see the world and what would they compare the things they see to? Ask them to capture an item with their senses and not their sight. Like if they pick up an apple and they can't describe it by what it looks like, how would they describe it? And that's going to unlock how they see the world in a new way. And that's going to give you just that extra spark of life for when you're writing them, which gives you a lot more just special oomph to just sneak in there. Because you get this whole other layer of how your character works. And readers are like, oh my gosh, this is so cool.
That is such a good idea. That is so much
It brings
fun.
them alive.
Yes.
So if you can find the little tidbits where you're like, he might be this real gruff, ornery, quiet fellow who only likes brawling, but he might secretly really want to be just perfecting his brownie recipe.
You did remind me of something, and I hope that this is okay for a squirrely tangent, but in my series, I had a person who lost their sight in the last book, and I had to really change the way that they saw the world. It changed the perspective of what he was doing. Now he couldn't do this. And I was, as a writer, it really stressed me because I couldn't just talk about what he saw. It was what was happening, like the sounds, the people, the conversation. It was hard. It was that would be a really fun exercise if you want to talk about back to your senses. Maybe talk about if your character were blind, what would they actually be?
Or if they just happened to be blindfolded for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny is I literally did this today writing my draft because I have a character that's agoraphobic, but she has to be taken out of her safe spot to another place. And the person who's doing it doesn't really care about her feelings. And so he whips out a hood and plonks it over her head. And she's like, fine, now you can't see it. You won't have anything to be afraid of. And she's like, well, that technically helps. But the process of her traveling now has to be experienced with sound and what she can sense.
That's awesome.
And so it was just a fun little moment to include where we got to dig into a different sensory option, which I thought was fun.
That is really cool. All right. So here for the next point, we've got our messy draft. We talk about our messy draft and embracing it. So tell me about your messy draft. Maybe it's different than mine.
My idea of a messy first draft is just trying to get the bones of the story down without worrying about if everything looks nice in the beginning. And this could just be to get a scene started, because sometimes it's just like, I'll take 5 minutes and I'll just write as fast as I can. Okay, this scene needs to have this, this, and this, and this. And the emotional thing I'm aiming for is this. And what is this? And I'll ask a question and answer it. And just kind of get this mini free write down before I dive in, so I can feel like I'm in the scene and I kind of have the direction I want to go in and that exact moment of when the scene starts, because that's kind of that kernel you want to catch. So for messy first draft, like, yes, you can do an entire book that way. I find it kind of starts driving me crazy because I'm like, there's so much I have to fix
Yeah.
if I do the whole book that way. But just to start a scene or start a chapter, I will do a messy 5 minutes, a messy 10 minutes,
Okay.
just to get things moving.
Okay. That's what you mean by the messy first draft.
Well, yeah, and it's not the going back and redoing your first chapter a billion times before you move on. I
No,
still
it's
have it be
just-
there's still going to be problems. Like if we go from the beginning to the end,
Mhm.
I'm not going to stop and edit a chapter. I just want to get things down.
Gotcha.
So it's the don't get fixated on your first chapter, keep moving forward.
That is a good idea. Yeah, when looking over just my draft in general, I tend to in trying to create a better poetic voices, I just look for my weak spots. You know, the words I use a lot, and highlighting those, you know, just as we've talked before, like the filter words and whatever. But I often will find that I tend to repeat words a lot, you know, when it's in your brain that you keep on, like you use one word and then you use it again in like 2 sentences later.
And it go like when you read it later, you're like, why did I
Why
do
did
that?
I use that? Yeah, those are the type of things I try to find and just rearrange the words so and look for more poetic way of phrasing it. So that's my messy first draft.
Yeah.
But I like your concept of the messy first draft.
Like,
So-
and I think some of our biggest hangups can be, I don't know how to start this specific thing. I'm not quite sure how to capture this specific thing. And I just want to encourage people to allow them to take this free form poetic take on it where it's okay to write in the moment and just capture ideas. And there's no perfect. There's just the ideas that you have in your head and those you put on the page. And so it's like, let yourself free write, let them fall out onto the page and then pretend there's no rules and just allow it to go. And then afterwards you can go through and be like, I love this. That's really weird. And you can shape it, but you can't do anything unless you've actually put it out. And it's when you do stuff like that, you have the coolest ideas fall out or the coolest way of describing something that you wouldn't have allowed yourself to do before because you weren't giving free rein to just make these weird associations between ideas and thoughts.
Yeah.
So I think be messy, misfrizzle it. It's okay. We like it.
I love that.
We can misfrizzle it all the way. So this entire episode, we've kind of talked about different exercises and techniques and literary devices that can really inject life into prose and into fiction. That, I mean, even if you're not a poet, you can use these to kind of be your secret weapon to unlock really cool ways of enhancing your characters and your description.
Right.
Because these exercises can help the words and ideas flow. So, do you have any specific other exercises or techniques or just thoughts you'd like to share about this?
Sure. Well, sounds are really important, specifically in poetry. And what I mean by sounds is I mean the sounds that your mouth is making, where your tongue is, where the hum is in the back of your throat. There are certain words that just aren't pretty, like lubricate. Let's
let's
go
say that
back to
again.
that word.
Thanks.
It's not a pretty word. That ooh sound makes your mouth like go, ooh, you know, like ew, you know, like a gross sound. And then it's hard k sound. So I say things like say the sentences out loud. We can read them and they look great, but see how they work together if they actually marry well. A lot of really great poems have a nice sense of flow and nice rhythmic kind of cadence, but they work in harmony. These sounds work in harmony together in order for things to run smoothly. If I think about prose that I absolutely love, would be like Kelly Barnhill when we talk about The Girl Who Drank the Moon. That if you look at the way that she has just arranged her sentences in a way that your mouth can say them, and it's kind of lovely. then you've kind of engaged the concept that I'm trying to say. It's just think about the sounds and how much action your mouth is actually using, and avoiding those gross sounding words that are just unpleasant to hear and or say. So that's what I was going to say. What about you?
I was just looking at some other random exercises that people could try just to help spark different ideas. And one of the ones I came up with, I didn't come up with it. One of the ones I found during my research, I'm not going to take credit for it. This one
you totally could have, though.
I probably could have. The person who talked about this one tried to attribute it to E. E. Cummings. They couldn't find it though, so I can't say it's actually from them, but it's a rhyming game where you start with one word and you just keep on making rhymes with that words, and they could be slant rhymes, they could be not great rhymes, but just start just randomly just listing words that kind of rhyme with each other until you make that weird idea connection between different concepts of the words. So like, it could be like couch, pouch, slouch, mouse, house. I mean, that was a bad slant rhyme right in the middle. And you start just having this just avalanche of random words fall out. And then your brain is going to be like, oh, wait a minute. We had a pouch. We had a mouse, a slouch. I could make something with that because it gives you something other than starting from nothing.
Yeah, that sounds lovely.
So it's a random little exercise that I thought was fun, that it has no bars for entry. Like anyone could do that. Anyone could sit down and be like, okay, let's name some rhyming words just for fun.
That is fun. I often would, that's an exercise I taught my kid when she would just go on and on and on about just talking and talking. There was a time when we said you could only talk to us in haiku. So then she had to come up with a haiku.
Okay, that's funny.
In order to talk to us.
If you want to ask us a question, it has to be a limerick.
It has to be right, exactly. But she's like so awesome when it comes to poetry now. So
it's using a different part of your brain, and the more you wake it up, the more it becomes a tool.
Yep.
And that brings us right into our finishing thoughts, is that poetry is a great way to help you see your writing in a new light. So maybe you're going to use word association to help generate new ideas. Maybe you're going to use synonyms or metaphors or alliteration, or just paying attention to the sounds of your words. But you can use all of these things to help tap into the deeper emotions of your characters. You can help yourself tap into your deeper self in your writing to bring things out that are unexpected and delightful. So we do have a listener assignment. Hey, guess what? It has to do with poetry.
Yay!
It's
congratulations.
Surprise.
Welcome to April.
So you're going to take a step back from your work and either choose a setting or a character that you feel needs some more depth, that you haven't really explored enough yet, and you would like a little help. And you're going to take one of the exercises we talked about, and you're going to do it with that character in mind and just see what ideas come out. Let yourself have fun with it. Set a timer if you feel like you might get, a little stressed out about it. If you're feeling overwhelmed, then only let yourself do it for 5 minutes. It's okay. Anyone can do anything for 5 minutes. Even me.
Yeah, me too.
All right, tell us all about our next episode.
I entitled it The Dead Poet Society, but what we're going to talk about is specific poets that happen to be dead that have had specific words or phrases that have kind of incorporated themselves into our everyday phrases that we remember. And these poets are the ones that created it. That's what I want to talk about.
I think that'll be lovely.
I hope so.
All right. A huge thanks for listening today. If you've enjoyed anything you've heard today and you would like to give us a little tip in our digital tip jar, we have several ways you can do so. We have a Patreon. We have a Buy Us a Coffee. Both of those links are found in the description. And as always, likes and subscribes will help you see us next time we put a fresh episode out.
Yes.
So be great. It helps you. Do it for you.
It's a win.
It is a win. All right. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Squirrel Podcast for the Distracted Writer with Candace J. Thomas and Jody L. Milner. Please like and subscribe to our podcast for updates and new episodes, and find more information at our website, squirrelpodcast.com. Stay distracted, everyone.
I have texture.
Texture. That one's kind of lame.
Yeah, we could have done better than that. Come on. Who made these cards? Oh, wait. Breathing.
The texture of breathing. See, let's do that one again.
The texture of breathing.
We'll cut that. That can be an extra.
We can try again. You know you can just read what you wrote, right?
But I can't because I put the wrong words.
True. How about you try explaining it to me like I'm a duck? See? Metaphor.